Hey, I'm Gayla. After 20 years of climbing the corporate ladder, I took the leap and started my own business to pursue my dream of creating a work-from-anywhere lifestyle. Having the freedom to work from practically anywhere is such a cool feeling. You're in the right place if you're looking for ideas and inspiration to start and grow your own online business. Every week in this podcast, you'll receive practical ideas, hints, tips, and tricks to help you grow your online business where you can leverage your time and you can accomplish more. You too can experience wonderful adventure and freedom as you live life on your own terms. Hi there, and welcome to another Gayla Scrivener Show. With current world affairs, many workplace routines are being disrupted. Employers who had never considered a remote work situation for their employees are now giving it a second thought. Employees who once thought to work from home would be like a dream come true are facing their own challenges and anxieties. The Scrivener Solutions team started a discussion on our Slack channel last week talking about different things they did to transition into a work-from-home schedule. The Slack discussion was just getting really good, so we moved it to our team meeting Monday night. And I thought it would be great to record our discussion as everyone shared the challenges and advantages involved with remote work. I thought it was really good because our roundtable discussion included both a perspective from the employee standpoint and the employer standpoint. You know, you're really in for a treat because this week's episode, you'll reap the benefits of hearing from 7 seasoned remote professionals. You'll hear from Brandy, Sharon, Norma, Arlene, Megan, Robert, and I as we share tips on staying focused, and we discuss the importance of communication, structure, and working out some of these tech issues. Now, you have to know, this is during a team meeting, and it's in the evening, so please excuse the occasional dog whine or background noise. We use Zoom meetings for our team meetings because I find it very important that we need to see each other face to face on occasion, even if it's just on a video call, so that we can be a better connected team. Our team meetings are casual, but for the most part, I think that the background distractions were pretty minimal during our roundtable discussion. Well, let me pull back the curtain and join our Scrivener Solutions team meeting. There's a lot of people that are needing to work from home and they're not accustomed to it. Brandy, you had a great idea that we could have a discussion on some tips and tricks on working from home. We've got a whole team. There's how many of us here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of us. Guys, we're going to go around the room because we're going to have a round table for this podcast and interrupt our normally scheduled staff meeting, and I'll start with you, Brandy. Brandy?
Hi.
We've got Brandy. We've got Robert.
Hello.
We've got Sharon.
Hello.
And Arlene.
Hello.
And Megan.
Hi.
And Norma.
Hello.
And that is the Scrivener Solutions team, and we've been working remotely together for quite some time. We use some awesome tools to communicate, and I think that is the biggest thing that's important, is the communication part. We use Slack to communicate, and Slack is a instant messaging system. I have 4 or 5 different channels because I talk with different teams and everything, but some of our clients now use Slack and communicate with us that way. What do you think the advantages are with Slack versus like your text or email?
I think emails get buried really fast. There's just so many coming in and out.
I really like Slack. You can go back in time. There's different, like if I want to send one just to Gayla, I can send a message straight to her. If I want to send one to Sharon, because we're working on a client's project together, it doesn't, it doesn't cloud up everyone else's messaging, but then we can easily send one to the whole team, and they're searchable, really easy to use and get around.
And you can have different companies separated, like we can work with one company, just you and I can communicate, or we can communicate with them through it and send their information, something they need to see right away. And then we can hop over and go to a whole different company and send them information, and also still have it in one central place instead of it getting buried or lost. It's this client, it was this topic, and you can search it and find it, like Brandy was saying.
Well, for me, it's like I can compartmentalize. Okay, this is work mode, and this is, because you guys text me once in a while, and that's more play mode type thing. But with Slack, it's work mode. And sometimes, obviously, if it's something real emergent, we just pick up the phone and talk to each other. Did you guys know that there's a phone call
I saw that
part to it? We hardly ever use that. We just use it for texting, but we can have voice over internet. We didn't have those types of tools 10 years ago. Norma and I had worked together in a medical management office, and we transitioned you, Norma, from working in the office, and because you're based in Missouri, and our corporate office back then transferred down to Florida. I was so glad that I got to keep you on because of your experience and everything. But when transitioning from from the regular office to your home office, what kind of things and what kind of challenges did you have?
Well, I'm needing to set up the DSL line at the time is what we were running on, and having to get that switched over in my home so that I had that stable to run to our server, which you had remotely placed as well. Staying on top of my IT guy to make sure he had all of the functions set up and going before he left. Bringing in a business phone line was another one that I had to work out with my local phone carrier. And it had to be able to be a separate line in my house, access our voicemails and things like that. For faxing, you and I ended up using a specific type of a fax type service.
It was called eFax, and we could scan our images.
Yes.
But nowadays, I don't even think anybody uses fax machine. But we overcame that challenge because we found a technology that we needed to
because
to fax a lot.
Yeah, with the offices that we worked with in other states and what their processes and things were at that time with sending communications and documents that we needed. So as those challenges came up, we worked together and designed behind the scenes processes for that so that we could continue to function without any hiccups.
So you got the internet connection that you needed.
Yes.
Be fast enough. And that is a concern because I have a cousin that works for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and she's able to work from home, but in her, I guess you could say in her job description, she has to have a certain level of internet speed and connectivity or percentage of uptime because she just has to have that. I don't think we were that strict, but working in the medical field, we had security issues, firewall issues, and Did you use your personal computer, or was that the company computer that we brought into your house?
Yeah, it was the company computer that was brought in and set up and everything on my internet line and stuff like that, and company phone and everything that we brought in for that. I think everything that I had brought in for my home office was basically bringing the office that was closing here. My office set up there was brought into my house and stuff into my spare room for that. And making sure that, we were still HIPAA compliant and stuff. I had to have door locks and shredding capabilities to secure all that information in my personal home to be compliant with our HIPAA laws and things.
And that's something to consider with what we do with Scrivener Solutions. We are able to use online services and have our password, but security is a big deal. And one of the things that we had transitioned, I mean, our clients have to entrust us with their passwords to a lot of their accounts. No bank accounts, nothing like that, but we have to guard their passwords and be a good stewards to them. So security is important. So we use a system called LastPass for our security vaults. And there's challenges with that. And we learn the system. That's something as an employer, if you're transitioning folks to work remotely, either temporarily or long-term, that's something to consider. It's like if you're letting the equipment leave your premises and go to somebody's home, or allowing your staff to use their own personal computers. And how are you going to get through the firewalls or have policies about passwords? Like for you guys, I ask you, and it's one of our rules is not to save passwords into our browser, because all the browsers say, do you want to save this password? Well, I turn that possibility off, and we go through LastPass because there's encryption, and we just don't use our clients' passwords that way. For some industries, we may need to have a little bit, they may need to implement more strict rules. Brandy, had you worked remotely for not small business administration, but you worked for Osby and
yeah, I worked at the attorney's office.
Oh, that's
and
right.
I never worked like permanently remotely, but my kids were young and in daycare, so there were plenty of days where they were sick and my husband was out of town, so I was the only one that was there. And my boss was pretty apprehensive at first, like about me working from home, but I think he eventually saw that I was almost more productive at home because I didn't have phones ringing. I didn't have people coming into my office every 10 minutes asking me questions. I'd put the sick kid next to me on the couch, and they're not going to move much when they're sick, and I could probably get most of my work done just in the morning versus being interrupted all day long trying to get stuff done. So I did work from home remotely a few times there. And then with Osby, I want to say the same thing happened. There were a few times where the kids were sick. I don't think I ever did my main tasks, but there were plenty of things I could take home and work on. I think they had different firewall stuff set up that I couldn't quite get on the remote. We did do, trying to think, Google Desktop Connect or something, where I could open up my laptop, and I essentially, if someone walked into my office, it looked like there was a ghost moving the computer. So I could remote access for a while. And I did that after we moved here. I did that so I could train the new employee who took my position. I did that for a few months to go over stuff with her. So I kind of had experience a few times before going completely remote.
Well, that system, I don't use it very often anymore, but there's a system called TeamViewer. And I would help some of our clients years ago. We don't do this service anymore, but if they had a desktop QuickBooks version, and then on a weird hour off hours for them, I'd log into their computer and it looked like some ghost was like taken over. But but now they have online services for almost anything.
The last employer that I worked from home, I reported to an office in West Virginia. I used a VPN Connect with a dual sign-on. And then our instant messaging program, and I can't remember the name of it that we used, we actually could do screen share. And so I could interact with them one-to-one if I needed to with them in West Virginia, or even some of the girls that I worked with on programs and tasks that were in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to, and they could get in and see my screen, and or I could see their screen, so that we could cross train, or they could show me how to get to a task or train me on something new.
From the perspective of working remotely, and we've been working together for quite some time, all of us have, I'm going to just go around the room and you guys tell us, what piece of advice do you have for somebody that's never worked remotely? Let's just go around the room. I'll start with Brandy.
My piece of advice might just be to be flexible at first while you kind of figure it out, because it's going to be different. You're going to, you want to get into a routine, and I feel like that's what people stress. Like, you got to get into a routine, but it may take a little bit to get there. I know for me, I had to adapt to working nighttime hours because I have my kids here during the day. And since I didn't have to have set office hours, I was kind of able to work a little bit more non-conventional hours and still get all my work done. So get a routine, but have some grace with it, and know that it may take a little bit of time to figure out. But
Mm-hmm. Robert, do you have any advice for folks?
Oh boy, do I. Yes. For working remotely,
Yeah,
you need a good office space.
you do.
Outside is a great one. Picnic table. Working remotely from a picnic table.
Well, we work non-traditionally.
Exactly.
Non-traditionally.
That's right.
Yes.
So that would be really remote.
It would be. But what's the biggest challenge when you're at a picnic table?
Internet is biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm. So,
but you can do all those tasks that don't require internet, like editing video footage that I do.
if
or
your job
podcasts
has that, yeah.
And pictures and all that, and then go to a library and upload.
So you're saying that if you go into a non-traditional office that you may not be used to, like a library, set your hours to go to the library.
Yep.
And
you seem to get more done there in a short amount of time than most people do all day.
Yeah.
Because you're focused.
Yeah.
That's the way I am.
That is. Get you in the library.
Yeah.
And your nose to the grindstone.
Darn right.
All right. We'll just make an appointment tomorrow.
Okay.
Norma, do you have any advice?
If you work remotely, like I've done in the past as a regular full-time day job, when you're in your office, you're in your office. That's your hours, and family or other members that might be in the home need to understand that. So they can't just pop in and ask you questions and stuff, because you're conducting business. And those are your hours. The remote after flexible hours, I love that now, being able to do that. So that, like what Brandy said, working unconventional hours and having the flexibility to do that. But getting in that routine, that's one thing I love, is making sure you have a routine for that.
Good. How about you, Arlene? Do you have any advice for anyone, or what's your perspective on working remotely?
Having come from a full-time traditional office, retiring and working part-time is really ideal, because you can schedule your work around your retirement activities and be able to access the team through the various programs which we use or you have, that are relatively simple and easy to use. So it would work well for part-time, certainly.
Good deal. How about you, Megan?
I don't know about advice, but just more or less of food for thought for both employees and employers, is people think that you're not gonna, that you're gonna have distractions at home, but in reality, whenever you're at work at an office, how much work are you actually getting done on your actual work, like for your job? Like Brandy was saying, it's like, how many people are walking into your office asking you questions or need advice or phone calls? How many non-essential emails are you replying to? How many meetings are you having to go to that takes away from doing your task? So I think working from home, you're still going to have some of those things, but now you can reprioritize. It's like, okay, I can actually get my task done first without all the walk-in distractions, and then I can do the rest of like the non-essentials that my job still requires.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yes. Sometimes, that's one of the biggest fears that I had years and years ago, and wanting to release folks to work from home. They're not going to be as productive at home. And that's a real fear for employers. And I think it's up to the employee to alleviate some of those fears, kind of prove themselves.
I think it's a good opportunity for people to prove their productivity at home. So even though if you work a typical office job and you're going to go back to that from working remotely, eventually you'll go back to the office job that you could push for if you needed a long weekend or you needed to go on the road for a family trip or something, you could still get your work done. And I think if you prove yourself now working at home, when that opportunity comes, I think you'd have a little bit more of a leg to stand on, saying like, I've worked from home before, I've proven that I can be productive. And then bosses may be a little bit more open to occasional remote work so that people can have a little bit more of a flexible schedule.
I think this is more of a fear for employees and employers of, yes, my hours are flexible, but I also don't want anyone calling me at like 10 o'clock in the evening. Definitely learning to find that balance of, hey, I have flexible hours, but these are my appropriate hours of when to talk to me. And one thing about Slack is that you do have business hours of when you can contact people or when you get notifications. So, which I like more than handing out my personal phone number, because your personal phone number, you can't just say, hey, don't talk to me. You can, but you'll be rude. But at least with business apps, you can set timers and be like, hey, like these are my office hours. So it's learning to find a balance with your employees and employer of, hey, I'm flexible, but I still have appropriate hours of when it's okay to be contacting me for our business.
Yeah, very good.
But on the other hand, be available, especially if the boss or the manager needs you. Let them know, yes, I'm here. I'm available to answer your questions or to do whatever it is. I know you sometimes get on to me for being a little too available.
Yes.
But I will answer every time unless I'm asleep or away from my phone, which is very seldom. Because I figure if you're asking a question, you're ready for an answer.
Well, there's boundaries, and that is something that we need to consider. With Scrivener Solutions, our setup is much more flexible than what Norma and I had 10 years ago in the medical management office. And what a lot of people are facing, if you're facing some sort of illness or some sort of happening to where you're kind of forcing your hand to consider remote working when you're used to being in a traditional office, they may have traditional hours. See, Norma needed to have her, we had set office hours, and we worked something out based off of the different time zones we were working.
Yes.
And when she clocked out, she clocked out. It's not appropriate to communicate with her at 10 o'clock at night because I had something pop into my head. Because, and the internet has made us so fluid, and the phone, our smartphones have made us so fluid that people's expectations are that you should respond immediately. In a traditional office sense, and you're trying to move it into a remote work situation, I think that the employee and the employer needs to have a healthy balance of what are the boundaries. I think that that's something to consider, and having a conversation, just having a conversation up front, because I think we take for granted that our work situation with as virtual assistants, that we have that flexibility, whereas not all offices have that. They have to have phone hours. That was something that Norma had to adhere to. She had to field the phones, and we don't have that in our office. And not everything is suitable to go to remote work. But if there is, or if there's a piece of it that the employer can feel rest assured that the tasks are being done, and the employee can still earn an income, that's a really, really big thing. And alleviating the fears. You just need to pause, no matter what's going on and how frenzied you feel like, okay, we got to get it done. Just pause and get some structure to it. That's That's what I think, because I know from our standpoint, knowing the expectations makes us all feel better. So when we bring on clients, our virtual assistant clients, as I said earlier, communication is really, really, really important. Well, we get a new client and we don't have that communication of knowing exactly the expectations that they want from us. They don't have the structure as what you have already learned if you're in a traditional office and you've already got your routines. You already know what you're doing. The advantage from the employer side is, hey, you've already got your trained workforce. They already know the routines. They already know the systems. And it's so much better if an illness or some sort of catastrophe happens that you need to consider remote working and not dig your heels in. Brandy, you were able to work with a former employer for quite some time.
Yeah, states away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right now in what's going on in our, communities across the nation, we're not only thinking about working remotely, but we're also thinking about schools being closed. We don't have young ones in our household. And Norma, you don't either. So setting those boundaries, having the conversation with your spouse and saying, okay, I'm working. I cannot be interrupted. I mean, you had a door that you could close.
Yes.
I didn't. So I had to tell Robert, honey, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just working. So then when Robert's working, he ignores me too. So I guess
it works both ways.
It does. It does. How do you guys manage, especially with little ones, in interruptions? Because if you have, Brandy, when you're working with children and working your job, how do you get it done?
I try not to do projects during the day because so much of my stuff, I just can't be interrupted and get back to. So like I said, I have shifted to nighttime hours for now. I do work sometimes during nap time if I know I've got a couple hours and I have a project that's only going to take an hour, hour and a half. I know there was a few times where I got really overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, I can't physically stay up all night long working and I have to get up early again with the kids. And I remember I sat down with my husband and I just said, look, I'm really overwhelmed. I'm working all day with the kids, then all night doing work, and I have no time to decompress. And just, I think it piled up after a while. And so we had to sit down and come up with a schedule and then try to see where we could be flexible. So there was a couple nights a week where he got home from work and the second he walked in, I disappeared. And he knew he was on duty. He knew he was feeding, putting him to bed. I didn't physically leave the house because I was set up here to work. But the kids knew that was kind of my boundary I had to create to get a few more hours done, to get my projects done on time. So I try to do my typical nighttime hours. But like I said, if we have big projects and things have to get done, I was able to kind of move my schedule around a little bit to make that work. But you got to be flexible.
Now, Sharon, you've worked from home for quite some time. You've homeschooled your children, and now they're older. But what kind of challenges have you had with working from home and homeschooling?
When they were younger, and I have worked from home almost 20 years, so that was all they were used to. When they were babies, I worked from home, and they knew that. It was harder when they were younger. Now that they're older, it's a lot easier. I have my time, but I get them set up first. I lay out their school or whatever projects they may have due first, and then I go to my stuff. And I've done that for years. When they were littler, I worked at night like Brandy did, and that was a little harder because my husband was home then, and he's like a child sometimes too. They all know pretty much if I'm on the phone or sitting in front of the computer, I'm pretty serious about it. Don't interrupt me and don't pick on me. So it's a lot easier now that they've gotten older.
We went to go see Brandy recently, Robert and I did, and I was sitting at her dining room table working on one of our clients' projects and I was doing a lot of copy and paste. And your oldest, boy, she was excited to help. She wanted to, and she knows her way around the computer. She must be your assistant because she's hired.
It's kind of cool that she kind of gets to observe me working, you know, a lot of times kids don't get to always see their parents work unless it's one random day they get, you know, take your child to work day or whatever. But she's always said, well, how old do I have to be to get a website? How old do I have to be to do this? And I'm like, we've got a few years. But just to be able to see that and have that as an option for her when she gets older is pretty cool.
And how old is she?
6.
I
or
know.
6.5 if you ask her.
Yeah. Better get that half in there.
Yeah.
Megan, you're a teacher. Do you have any advice on knowing from the teaching aspect?
I think for the majority, unless if you're sharing you homeschool kids, some parents are in their mind of like, oh my gosh, my kid is at school for 8 to 3 and they need to be learning something at home from 8 to 3. And it's like, you know what? No, they can maybe practice like math, reading, again, like 10 to 20 minutes per subject area at home, and they'll be fine, along with just reading on their own, and a kid will survive. And I feel like that's a real struggle because it's not a lot of education that can happen at home. It's going to be just practicing what they already know, and it's not going to last them a long time.
Practicing what you already know and just spending that time. Focus time is what I'm hearing. Focus time with family, focus time with work, and compartmentalizing that way.
Mm-hmm. As a teacher, whenever I was a teacher, I didn't assign homework because there's honestly not enough research at the elementary level to show that homework correlates with better grades or retention of memory. It's literally just a segue to communicate with parents of like, hey, this is what your child should be able to do at home, or at least on their own. And also just eventual practice for good study habits. But it is more of the communication between the parent and the child. So my homework per se was have them read every day, try, and talk to your kid during dinner. Encourage the conversation of what is happening at school, what's going on in your life.
And you taught 4th grade and?
I taught 4th grade and 2nd grade.
Good
and
deal.
Then prior to that, I was a nursery teacher.
Good deal. Arlene, do you have anything to add about your perspective of work and family and working from home, or even from the position, because you had worked in a traditional office for many years, all your career, and retired from that? Were there any apprehensions from an employer standpoint that we should be aware of?
Well, I think technology has improved so much, and it's so much more widely done now that there may not be so much apprehension. But in the day, there are managers who were very uncomfortable if they didn't have on-site view of their coworker or the folks they were supervising. That's certainly a curve, and to know that your folks are going to get their work done, and some people are old school and are quite frankly not in tune to it. So it kind of depends on the environment that you're working in. But I do think with what's going on now, the whole perspective of working at home is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
People really say, hey, this is really, really good, or they'll go, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. I always thought folks that work from home had it made, but it's a little harder than I thought. And so I think there'll be some adjustment around the workplace and businesses to evaluate, and it may change a bit from the traditional office.
It may. One of the things is communication is very important, but there's also, right now we're on a Zoom call. We're all on video. We can see each other. We don't necessarily see each other eye to eye like this very often. But I think it's important for us to remember that we're all human and that we get to know each other and we work as a team, even though we aren't physically in the same office. So somehow we need to use tools to bridge the communication. And our client, Jennifer Villa, she just posted today on her website talking about just that. It's like, if you're not accustomed to getting on video, then get into the digital age and do so, because that is super important. You know, you can have a free Zoom account that's very robust. You can have one-on-one conversations with somebody, a video chat with somebody, unlimited time. Or you can have up to 100 participants and have a 40-minute call. That's for free. Or there's other resources, and I'm going to link to that into the show notes, because it was a very good tips on how to do a great video call and what to be aware of. And I know we joke, you know, is this a regular call or a video call? Oh, I got to brush my hair, or I've got to put on makeup or put on the right shirt. I don't care about my pants because it's just from the waist up. You know, we've got jokes like that all the time, but we want to present right. And I think that video calls are the way to do it. We have most of our check-in calls with our clients are just phone, but I have one client that every week, and maybe 2 or 3 times a week, we are on a Zoom call so that she could share her screen. She's very much, it's like, see what's going on here, can you help me with this, or this is what I need. And I think that there's a lot of value to that. Another tool that we use a lot is Screencast-O-Matic. How I use it for you guys is something pops into my head and I want to show you, either there's an issue with a system that we're using and it's like, it's hard to explain in Slack, in a chat. Let me just do a quick 2-minute video and show you, or train you on something. It's like, this is what's expected. And we have a library of all these videos. I send you the video, and then when you're ready to do the task, then you've got the instructions. If I fixed something, because you asked me a question, it's like, well, I'm in there, I'm just going to fix it. But I want you to know how I did it. You've got access to all those systems, so if you need to video. But being able to communicate back and forth, and I think having those expectations on the employer's side of knowing, okay, do we need set hours? How important is it to have, do you need to work the same traditional hours, or are we going to shift to project-based? You need to get this done by this date. And if you're working on it at 11 o'clock at night, I shouldn't care as long as it gets done by the deadline. But when you are working as an employer that you're used to certain office hours, it's a transition. I think as employees, we need to be aware of the apprehensions that the employers might have. Employers need to be aware that there's some apprehensions that on the employee side. It's up to the employer to give positive reinforcement or positive feedback as much as possible, because when you don't see somebody eye to eye, sometimes you just don't. You take for granted and you just don't do that. Mm-hmm. Norma, do you have any other suggestions?
The only other thing I was thinking about is, even though, I work a regular full-time day job outside my home, and I, do this after hours in the evenings, one of the things with you were talking about using the communication tool that we have, Slack, that I have that app on my phone so that if something comes up, I can look at that, and if it's something important, I can prioritize that on a break at my regular job to respond to my team for something that maybe I don't work on until the evening. But I have the opportunity of looking at that and deciding and prioritizing if that's something that needs to be, responded to soon, even though I'm not on my regular outside virtual job. But I still use that tool as a line of communication, mm-hmm. even outside my regular virtual hours and stuff. So, yeah. But communication, again, going back to that, communication is so key in whatever, if you're full-time, you're part-time, you're flexible, whatever that is, to whoever.
And I know for you,
mm-hmm.
When we were in the medical office and transitioned you to work at your home, you mentioned having a business phone versus, and that's something that employers may need to consider, or using the technology out there, that there are a lot of services that you could forward a phone to. I'll look some up and put in the show notes, but we use Google Voice for Scrivener Solutions, and there are other services out there that we can, I think it's called eVoice, we used to use with our medical office, where you can even create forward a phone number that you already have, and you can have different extensions. So there's so many tools out there to be, and resources, and just being open-minded and know that there's going to be hiccups at first.
Right.
And it's going to be uncomfortable at first, and there's going to be a little bit stressful, but if you just slow down and keep expectations in check, have an open mind and open ears and open communication.
Yeah.
Robert, do you have any last thoughts?
I love my job.
Do you now?
Yes, because I can work from anywhere.
I know. You can. When we're working from anywhere, we had a few podcasts last year about it, challenges of power and internet. Because when we do our little epic, that's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? But our several week nomadic travel, we are on solar and cell service.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to be that extreme. We could have a totally different show on that. The extreme travel work from anywhere show.
Why don't we?
Why don't we? I think we should. I think we'll just kind of wrap that up. I appreciate it. I thought we had some really good information that could help folks. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed our roundtable discussion, and I hope that the experiences and perspectives of Brandy, Sharon, Norma, Arlene, Megan, and Robert helped you in some way. We mentioned dozens of resources available to help with remote working, some that we use, some that we used in the past, some that we've heard of. So be sure to check the show notes because I'll have links to those resources. Maybe you know somebody that unexpectedly has to be creative in their workspace. I'd love it if you'd share the episode. It'd mean a lot to me. And until next time, keep your spirits up and have a fantastic week.